Today, I have the gorgeous Amanda Kate on the Awakened Feminine podcast. She's joining me all the way from Melbourne. Welcome to the show, Amanda.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so good to be here. I love being in your energy. So, yeah,
Yeah,
really appreciate it.
I'm excited for our conversation. Before we get started, though, Amanda, can
Yeah.
you just give our audience just a quick synopsis of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a kinesiologist, archetypal life coach, go under lots of titles, and I still don't think I found the right one. It's funny, I went out for lunch with a girlfriend on Saturday and we were both like, yeah, like our titles that we use kind of talk about what we do, but if we used words that actually spoke about what we do, we don't think anyone would find us. So we're sticking with them for now. But yeah, I bring in a lot of different skills, both from my own personal development journey, spiritual development journey, and the things that I've learned in more formal settings, the kinesiology, total body modification, archetypal life coaching, Reiki, all of the things that I've done, and so many more that I've probably forgotten about because I am the eternal sage, always learning new things to bring into client sessions. So yeah, so it's been a full on 7.5 years almost of studying and learning and reading and delving into, I guess, new ways of being. I feel like that journey has been teaching me how to human properly.
Mhm.
I feel like for the first sort of 36, 37 years of my life, I seem to get it wrong. The whole humaning thing, the whole relating to people thing. I honestly, I know that probably sounds crazy, but I've always felt like I don't quite belong on this planet for some reason. And when I try to relate to people, either I used to overshare or I would say strange things, or like it never came easy to me. So childhood was very normal. It was a very tick box kind of thing. I got good grades, went to high school, good grades, white, middle class, Church of England raised, behaved within my narrowly acceptable range of emotions and behaviors. And when I didn't, I was very quickly, pushed back on path. And then did the same at university, got good grades, worked through, from the time I was 14, and just complied to the things that were expected of me. I then went overseas for a bit and met my now ex-husband. And again, it was, get married, have 2 kids, nice house, international travel. But I was miserable. And I think it was when I really hit my early 30s that I started thinking, is this it? I'm with a man who doesn't seem to love me, certainly doesn't seemingly respect me. And I've got these 2 beautiful children that I love being around. And we've got this lovely house, but this is not what I envisaged my life to be. And it took me a number of years, I guess, of asking questions internally mostly, because he'd always told me everything that went wrong in our relationship was my fault. So I believed that. And eventually I got quite unwell with chronic fatigue, and that really just pushed me down the natural therapies route. And I haven't looked back since. I've just found these new ways of connecting with people, of understanding myself and human behavior. And it's just been incredible. So as much as I kind of feel like I didn't know how to human before, I feel like I'm kind of making up for it a bit now.
And I'm just so grateful we got to connect. I think it was a few months ago, and it was
Yeah.
like this instant, yep. I can totally relate to not really know how to human before. I'm still learning.
Oh, yeah.
We all are. And I just love how you said, all these titles. We have all these titles, but it doesn't really matter like what we do, like the work that we do. We just do it. It just works.
Yeah.
And there's really, like you say, there's no really there's no language to really, you know,
No. And I hate the
explain.
idea of being a coach, because for me, a coach stands on the sidelines and shouts orders at you. And I'm not that. I walk with you hand in hand.
Yeah.
I prefer the word mentor, but again, people seem a bit perplexed by that word mentor, and they assume mentoring comes for free, which, as much as I love helping people, I've done so much free work that it's, I actually deserve to be paid for what I do. But I like mentor better because it's I will hold the light for you until you can hold the light for yourself and see the light in yourself. So I do love that term, but again, it's not really understood. And then if I go for healer, it feels really presumptuous. I'm not the one doing the healing, you are.
Yeah.
Anyone who comes to see me, they have a choice. They can get better or not. I can only do what I can do in a session.
Yeah.
If they take it out there, they're the ones doing the healing. I'm just putting the pieces together so they can gain new realizations. So yeah, language is definitely one of those things that limits us in so many ways.
I've just been saying I'm a magical unicorn. And then they're like, what do you actually do? So I'm magical.
Yeah, I do stuff and things.
Yeah, just things, make you feel better.
Yeah.
Help you make yourself feel better. Yeah. So before we dive in further into our conversation, and I know I can talk to you forever, what is your definition of an awakened feminine?
So for me, I think my own journey really, it was waking up to the fact that I even had this feminine in me. I know that probably sounds a little bit crazy, but the concept of that feminine and masculine parts of self, I'd never really thought of before. I'd never really thought that I was multiple parts in this one self. I just thought I was this big broken mess of a human being. I think for me, waking up to the difference between the feminine aspects and the masculine aspects, and learning the difference between the wounded feminine or masculine and the divine feminine and masculine. I think gaining clarity around that really helped me to start to notice in my own life how I could embody the divine feminine and masculine much, much more. So for me, awakened feminine is really about learning more deeply about yourself so that you can interact in the world in a, I guess, healthier way. It's not always going to, I keep going for other words there, but it's not really going to always be balanced or healthy or whatever. We're just going for degrees of improvement, I guess.
That's actually a good way to put it. Degrees of improvement, incremental improvement.
Exactly. Let's not do it all at once. It's too overwhelming.
I love that. I think when we first met, we just kind of started talking about, the divine masculine, feminine, and all those kind of things. So I really love your take of, what it all means. And I was the same. I didn't learn this stuff until like the last few years. And I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense now.
Yeah. It's just so clarifying to all of the parts of myself that I denied and suppressed and repressed and cut off myself and hated. And I know that's very culturally normal to be swimming in that water of, I guess, patriarchal systems, whatever you want to call it, but this comparison, competition, power over structure that we live in, to understand that there was a different way. That was really, I guess, the key to that awakening, was going, oh, there's other ways to do this. Like, we can both climb up the ladder, because it's actually not a ladder. I don't need to pull you off and smush you down to get higher. I know. And it was like, oh, because everything in my life previously had been about competition, had been about being better than, had been about being more right than, had been almost this argumentative state and passive aggression. And I mean, when we were learning about language and I started to recognize passive aggression, I was like, oh my God, I just thought that's how people communicated, because they were just trying to hide their anger and do the niceness on the surface. And I saw so much of that in the communication that I just thought that was normal.
Oh, I love it. It sounds so familiar because I was the same.
It's
Yeah.
the put on the brave face, pretend everything's fine, yet underneath that seething comes out.
Yeah.
And so I never realized I was passive aggressive because I actually never realized that I had so much anger stored in me either. I mean, and
Yes.
once I allowed myself to go into diving into myself and allowing myself to release that anger in a healthier way, again, it just started to disappear. You know, my partners occasionally said to me, "Oh, you're being a bit passive aggressive." I'm like, "No, I actually mean what I say right now." But I'm glad you pick me up on it, because I'm sure it's one of those habits I drop into without even noticing. So keep picking me up on it. But in this case, I was actually saying what I meant. So, you know,
I'm actually telling it to your face. Yeah.
there's no hiding about it.
Um, I want to ask you this question because as soon as you said you didn't know there was so much stored anger within you,
Yeah.
when did you start realizing that all the things that have happened was like there's this anger that's like never been allowed to come out because we need to, be that perfectionist, be that good person, that nice person to, fit into society, into the boxes, like you said. Yeah, when did you find out there was?
I think I started to really feel the anger when my marriage was going downhill and getting extremely toxic. It had never been great, but providing I played the role that I was expected to play, then things were fine. The second I started pushing back, and I used to say to my ex husband, "You treat me like a piece of shit on the bottom of your shoe that you're trying to scrape off. Not good enough." And just those little comments were actually me starting to dip beneath the surface of being socially acceptable, and trying out this, hang on, I'm going to start standing up for myself and believing that I actually deserved better. So the interesting thing and it was a narcissistic abusive relationship, which I didn't realize until literally the day I left him. It took a lot of work for me. Well, it took some brave people as well to say, "I think you need to look at what this is." And they didn't say any more than that. And I was reading it going, okay, that's actually what I've been dealing with now. I understand. But for a long time in the relationship, I was my own biggest abuser. So the self-talk that was going on in my head, the things I thought about myself, the hatred I had for myself was worse than what he was dishing out. So there was a part of me going, yeah, I deserve that. That's fair. It is my fault. You don't do anything wrong. You are perfect. It's me that's the problem. And when you've got this idea that you're not good enough anyway, that you're not worthy of love, then whatever they say to you kind of goes into this, oh, that could be true. And you don't really give it much other thought. Something shifted in me where I started going, I don't think this is all life is. And we've been having these problems for a long time. Originally, I thought I would be able to wait until the kids were grown to be able to leave the marriage, but as it turned out, I really, really couldn't. But I think in that starting to stand up for myself was really when I started lifting the lid on a bit of that anger. Now, it was not controlled. It was not healthy. It was as toxic as what was being thrown at me, because what would happen is I'd stand up to him. He'd tell me I was wrong, and then I would lose my shit. I would absolutely lose it. And it would be red rag to a bull and rage and all of that, to the point that I didn't even know if I was a functioning human being, because this rage would just come out of nowhere. But if you think, I've had however many years of being pushed down and held back, it's unsurprising now that I look at it. Now, what happened when I started doing the personal and spiritual development work is I started to find better ways to express that anger and to deal with that anger and to deal with the trauma and hurt underlying that anger, that then made it less toxic. But I also realized that there was no way I was going to be able to be in that relationship and be a fully functioning human being.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to all our listeners or to audience watching, like, I think there are lots of, I mean, even seeing people around me, there's in their relationship, there's that slight, like I'm one better than you. There's always that, play. Yeah, just not letting it get out of control to the point. Yeah. And having, having a look at what do you think of yourself, it's when you started changing that you kind of went, oh, wait, I don't need this. I don't need this shit.
But
Yeah.
also, when I started changing was when he got more toxic as well. And his insults, his put downs, his gaslighting, all of those skills that you hear about in that really extreme narcissism really came out. It was terrifying.
Yeah.
And because I started standing up to myself, and in standing up to myself, I was no longer buying into his delusion of his own perfection.
Yeah.
And that's when everything really started to change, was because it was just became this constant fight and argument because he thought I was trying to one up him. All I was trying to do was find myself and be able to be myself, because I started going, I'm not that bad a human being. And yet I'm being told daily how much I suck, how much I'm doing wrong, how everything I did was not right. And I started just going, well, surely I'm not that bad. Like, I see these other people out there who are doing less than I'm doing, and they're being loved and they're being accepted and they're being honored and they're being, cared for.
Yeah.
And there just started to become that disconnect between what I knew deeply internally and what I was seeing on the external. And something had to give because my health was going downhill. All of that emotional, psychological abuse was coming out in the physical, and I couldn't maintain where I was. I know if I had not left, something much, much worse would have happened eventually.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I wanted to ask you, like, looking back, so you had the negative self-talk. You didn't think you were good enough already. Did that happen before you were with him? Or
of course. Yeah. It was from day dot, there were those stories. And I don't blame my parents at all. They are very loving parents, but they learned to parent in an era where it was tougher. Certainly my mum's dad was in the war. Now you kind of go, well, these days we know about PTSD. We know about all of these different things that happen. And there's so many different aspects. There was a much harder way of raising children. And also we had the church influence, which was about guilt, shame, and blame. So if we did what was wrong, guilt, shame, and blame were the ways to pull us into line. But as a result, I really internalized the shame, which is the I am bad, I am wrong, not what I did was bad or wrong. Often I'd look at what I did and I'd go, that didn't actually deserve, like, I wasn't being that bad. So the action didn't deserve the response it sometimes got. So I made it that I was that bad. So if my action wasn't that bad and I'm getting this, anger pouring out at me from a parent, so then it must be me.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes, you can get into the thing, well, what I did was really bad, but I'm a good human. I just did something that didn't comply with expectations or what have you. Whereas for me, it was very much, I'm bad, I'm wrong, I'm not quite right.
Yeah, I think that's a common parenting style.
It is.
The guilt, shame, and blame. Yes, my parents also, like, post World War II babies, that's how they were raised. And so then, and also being Asian, that's the next level.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But, just looking at people around, and I do it, I'm guilty of it.
Oh yeah.
Because
I've traumatized my children. I put my hand up.
Yeah, I know. Every time I'm like, oh, my children are gonna be so stuffed up when they grow up.
Do you know the thing I say to my kids, because they're a little bit older than yours, mine are 17 and 15, and I just say to them, look, I am happy to go to any counselling session that you want that will, heal whatever it is that you think I've done, because realistically, I know I've traumatized you. I just don't know how yet. And you probably don't know how yet. So once you work it out, I'm happy to come sort it out with you.
That's great.
And I
That would
hope you
be
guys
my.
earn enough money that you can pay for the therapy that I'm creating.
Oh, I love it. But and the thing is, even if you were like the so-called perfect parent,
Hmm.
you will still traumatize your children by being too perfect. There is like,
Well, I look at it, the whole way that I look at it is, archetypally, if you had Jesus and Mary,
mm,
obviously that would be a bit weird because they're, mother and son. But, let's go
yeah, yeah.
archetypally. If you had Jesus and Mary, who were these enlightened beings who were raising you, there would still be issues. You'd want to be going out and, dating the wrong boys and smoking cigarettes and trying, whatever it is. There's just that natural rebellion that happens. The thing is, we come into this realm for a 3D experience from the spirit world. Now, that is where we are part of the all that is. We are part of collective conscience. We are part of God's source. We are pure love and joy and peace and happiness and connection and togetherness and all of the things. And we come here for an individuated experience. So when we are born, we need to learn that we aren't the doctor, we aren't the nurse, we aren't our mum, we aren't our dad. And we do that by making meaning in life. And so when my parents, shouted at me, just, I don't know, if they were having a bad day or if my mum's hormones were, out of whack or whatever it was, I couldn't logic in my mind or make peace with in my mind that that was something my parents were going through.
Mm,
I made it about me. I've done something wrong. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable enough. If only I could do this better, then they would be able to love me more. But that's the human experience, and that's what we're here to do.
mm,
And that's why, yes, we've got all this trauma, we've got all of these stories, we've got all of these belief systems, but they're what individuate us. And I think what happens when we wake up, when we become more awakened, is that we can look at, okay, I see all these stories. I see this trauma, I see this conditioning, and there's probably a shed ton of stuff I do not see. What do I want moving forward? How do I want to be? How do I want to live, the rest of my years on this planet? And, when we think about what is our trauma, well, all of it's our trauma, all of it's our personality, all of it's our conditioning, all of it's our societal inputs, our parental inputs. We can't really separate, well, this bit's the traumatized bit and this bit's this. And, it's all layers and it's all kind of mixed together and it's overlapping. So we sort of need to go in and go, well, which bits do I want to keep? Which bits are causing me harm or pain or discomfort? They're the bits then that we want to work on so that we feel more congruent as a human being. That to me was that waking up process. Which bits do I want to keep? Which bits do I want to get rid of? Not even get rid of, which bits do I want to make peace with so that they can live inside me without needing to arc up all the time and be a screaming toddler.
mm. I love that. Which bits do I need to make peace with?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think for a lot of people who go on the personal development and spiritual journey, at the beginning is all very love and light, love and light, let's push aside the bad bits of us and just have that, the good bits come out. And you don't, if you're enlightened, you don't have the bad bits.
Yeah.
But that is what it is like when you first start and you don't actually have, you kind of get like a bit gaslighted, I guess, into thinking that. And then as you're going on a journey, you're like, oh no, I suck at this personal development stuff because I'm still angry. I'm still like, da, 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 da. But then like, I just love that, making peace with those parts of ourselves because they are part of us.
Yeah.
And
the more we try and deny that they exist, the more they're going to arc up because they want to be looked at. And I think this is one of the biggest problems in the spiritual and personal development industry is that everybody is like, I'm healed, I'm your guru. The ego does come back into it. I'm keeping mine in check all the time because it is really easy to get, I guess, to run away with that. But our ego is so important. our ego is that personality. It is the bit that keeps us safe in this 3D world. It is so much a part of us. It's not about death to the ego. We are here to have an egoic human experience. So if we're trying to kill off the ego, how safe do you think that makes that part of us feel to come on the journey with us if we're constantly trying to get rid of it? And I think also, if we're only talking about love and light, we are living in delusion. We are deluding ourselves because there is harmony to be had, but we have to not ignore the shadows and the crap that sits there. We have to have both. And the more that we can love those crappy parts of us and bring them into the fold and go, okay, I can be a bit reactive, I can be a bit defensive, I can lose my temper much less easily these days, but it still can happen. What doesn't happen is the big rageful explosions that used to happen because I've got better tools to deal with it. And there's not so many parts that I've suppressed that need to arc up anymore. It's usually, this is pissing me off in this moment, not this is pissing me off, but it's unleashing this whole, stream of events that have happened from childhood till now. And all of those parts are trying to come out at once, like this big emotional vomit volcano. It's like, at least we've sort of, I'm now dealing with the ones that are here now.
Yeah. Hence when we talked about the incremental improvements, because we don't want to unleash like everything from like when you were born to now. And as
I say to people, we could probably reset you to factory settings, so to speak. But again, you want to be able to look at those individual experiences and to learn to love them. And your nervous system wouldn't cope if we just went, right, reset button, here we go, Control, Alt, Delete, whatever it is. We need to be able to do it gently and easily. We need to be able to do it piece by piece. If we try and do it all together, it's overwhelming. I mean, you know what it's like when you do a big clearing and you feel a bit spacey afterwards and you're like, oh, there's all these pieces of me that are, coming back into the fold and they feel a bit uncomfortable. You need time for those pieces of you that you're now accepting and acknowledging belong there to be able to settle in and find the way that you work together again.
Yeah. That usually involves a big, long sleep for me after a huge clearing session.
Yeah. Mine's nature. Very much I need to get out in nature.
Mine just, I had one the other day. I slept for 3 hours.
Wow.
It was like 11 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, I just had a 3-hour nap.
Oh, bless.
So, Amanda, I want to ask you more about, because you do archetypal, is it healing and what?
Life coaching.
Life coaching, yeah. And also we talked about the like the divine and wounded masculine and feminine. How does that all tie in to our, development, and how did you kind of bring those pieces into your life?
I had been dabbling in the archetypes for a little while when I found 𝐀𝐦𝐿 McKay's Evolve Now course. And she goes into the 22 archetypes, which is basically the major arcana of the tarot. And so it kind of tied a lot of things together about life cycles, about parts of ourselves, about, I guess, that, if we're living fully in the light in all 22 of those areas of our life, then we are enlightened. So, it's something to aim for. But realistically, what I do to bring them in and to get to know them better is sort of thinking of them as pieces of myself. And what pieces am I struggling with? Which pieces am I not owning enough? Which pieces, do I not feel as comfortable or friendly with? It's more about looking at that side of things. And I think realistically, it's giving labels to what's going on. And simultaneously, I'm wanting to get rid of some of those labels. And so it can be a little bit tricky because it gives me the language to really understand the work that I was doing even before I did this particular type of life coaching. So it's really improved the language and the way that I can describe it. It's given me more of the metaphors to use in healing. And for myself, it's really just given me this, I guess, greater clarity on, when things work well or when things don't, what structure is in place there for me to be able to make the shifts and changes that I need. What skills do I need to employ to be able to shift into a place where I'm working much more from my genius flow and much more from my light than from my problem pattern or from the dark.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
It is. It's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
It's just been so fascinating learning all that stuff.
Yeah. I haven't had any guests like that do this type of life coaching. So that's really cool.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So do you use the tarot, or is just more that, it just kind of follows that?
It's more understanding what qualities they embody, so that, I guess if somebody's coming in with a problem and I can see what they're not doing, it also helps me to see what they could be doing to use those problems in a more embodied, light, connected way. And so it's not necessarily about me teaching the archetypes, it's about me knowing them myself, so that I can bring the essence of it into healing sessions rather than necessarily. Some people want to know, and that's awesome. There's some fantastic processes to take people through to find their passion and purpose and to find their problem pattern. But most people don't really care about that aspect of it. From what I've seen, they just want to feel better. They just want to be better. They just want to, not be suffering the pain that they're suffering in their life. So, so I often use the first part of that, and then I'll move into kinesiology and some of the other tools I've got.
Yeah, it is so interesting. I used to be a pharmacist, so very, scientific and logical and wanting to have the evidence and the facts and all those things. But I mean, now that I've,
changed over to the dark side.
all I need to know is, okay, has it worked on someone else? Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm in. If it's worked, then I don't need to know how it works even, because I just trust that it would work. And, kind of like the people that work with you, like they don't need to know all that. They just people just want to feel better.
Yeah, absolutely.
They would, do anything. It doesn't, okay, so how did the feminine and masculine aspects then come in, and how did it change your life? Because I know you said that you didn't know about it until you started on your journey. Yeah.
I dove into it quite a bit through my kinesiology journey, because I'd heard people, talk about the masculine and feminine, and obviously, we can test whether it's coming up that masculine or more feminine side of the body. Obviously, we're talking archetypally, not gender-based here. Always need to put that in these days, unfortunately. But I think what it did was I was starting to look at how they worked together to create the harmony in the body. We can't have one without the other. And I've balanced a lot of people who've been to feminine embodiment work, and they're denying and suppressing their divine masculine. And so we've actually needed to draw out more of that divine masculine. I'll tell you a story. When I first met mine, I was working with my mentor. I'd actually booked in for a 4-hour session for some crazy reason. I think she was offering them and I jumped at the chance. Anyway, in that session, we did a whole heap of stuff. But one of the things we did was this meeting of my divine masculine and my divine feminine. And my divine feminine was this amazing Wonder Woman type Amazonian goddess. She was phenomenal. But then when I turned to meet my divine masculine, he was like a Danny DeVito, like short, angry man. He reminded me a bit of Danny DeVito as the Penguin, like just angry. And I mean, that's showing my age a little bit now. People might need to.
Yeah, they're like, what are you talking about? Which Batman is that?
I know. That was like ancient Batman.
I know.
Yeah, ancient Batman. Probably one of the only ones I've seen. But anyway. He was this short, angry man. And when I had a conversation with him, I realized it was because he'd been running the show for most of my life. He'd kept me safe. He'd kept me productive. He'd kept me doing what I needed to do to survive day to day. And all of a sudden, here's me putting all of this effort and energy into building up my divine feminine. And I'd done an amazing job with her. But of course, he's gone from being the star of the show to literally being shoved off stage and out of the picture. And that was really when I realized that it's so important to build a beautiful relationship between those two aspects of yourself. You cannot have one without the other. You cannot develop one without the other and expect to be a fully balanced, fully realized human being. You just can't. And when you think about it at a micro level, let's go really small. Your in-breath is the feminine, the out-breath is the masculine. If we only do one or the other, we're not going to last too long. And likewise, the death of the in-breath is the birth of the out-breath. And so we're cycling with that as well. Now, the way I look at it with the way I work in clinic, you know, the logic, the control, the planning, the social media stuff, all of those sorts of things, even the muscle testing in kinesiology, that's more masculine. It's external. It is proving, or not proving, but it is showing the client, look, your body has stress on this, or whatever it is. That's the masculine aspect of my business. But when I'm on social media, my voice is the feminine. My intuition when I'm standing at the table muscle testing, the questions that pop into my head to ask, that's the feminine. And so if I only had one without the other, I would only be doing half the job that I can do. Whereas what we want is to be able to bring more of ourselves to the table. And so this idea of marrying the masculine and feminine minds together, marrying is like marrying the conscious and subconscious together. The conscious mind is the masculine mind, the subconscious is the feminine mind. The more that we have those two in a true marriage together, a true partnership, again, the less that one needs to arc up and act up, and neither does the other. So we can approach them both with a much more divine focus rather than them turning into that teenager or child where they need to get angry or they're feeling hurt or they're wanting to create chaos because they're not getting the, I guess, their needs met. And also, if you think about the divine feminine, oh my goodness, how often when I was working with her did I end up feeling really flighty and ungrounded? And it was like, whoa, I'd be in some amazing places, but I wasn't fully grounded. And so again, you know, to use a different metaphor, because this one works better for people, if you think of the masculine as the riverbed and the feminine as the river, you know, if the feminine doesn't have a riverbed, we all know what happens with floodwater, especially in Australia. It's destruction, it is death, it is chaos, it is carnage, it is big emotions. Whereas if it has a structure to follow, if it is being held safely so that it can rage in parts, it can be very soft and gentle in parts. But if it knows it's being held and directed, it is so much easier to tap into the positive ways to use all of those different emotions, whether it be sadness, grief, anger, rage, wrath, whatever, vengefulness, all of those different aspects that we have within us, as well as joy. I mean, you think of when you feel joy and excitement, I mean, it can bubble over and be as strong sometimes as some of those negative emotions. So if we know that we can rely on this riverbed, then we can actually go deeper into our feminine because we've got a safe container and a safe structure in which to hold us.
Whew. Getting tingles as you're talking. I just love that. It is all about that divine masculine being that container to hold our divine feminine in that safe space to, yeah.
And direct, not to control.
Yes.
It's about having direction and guidance where you are going together towards what you need rather than control and manipulation
Yeah.
to
Because
try and get you somewhere else.
yeah, because if you just work, if you're just listening to your divine feminine without your masculine, you're not going to be doing anything.
No,
You just be getting all
absolutely.
this stuff, and you're not going to be doing anything.
No, absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, just love that full like explanation that you gave there. That was amazing. And I just love that analogy of that riverbed holding, the flow of the feminine.
Mm.
Oh, it's beautiful imaging. Okay, so we've got the divine masculine and the divine feminine. So then I want to talk about a bit about the wounded masculine and
Mm.
feminine because I think probably majority of people until they actually just start doing the work, come from that space
Mm.
of the wounded masculine, which is the control, the aggression, the trying to gain authority by aggression and control, and
Mm.
then the wounded feminine is like the victim and the
Mm.
mentality. Um, what's my question? I'm like, where am I going with this? So how can one because for me, I didn't know about I didn't know I was that wounded feminine and the wounded masculine in the same place. And then now we're like, oh, feminine rising. All we have to do is do the feminine part and let's,
Yeah.
like you said, like let's forget about the masculine and then it turns into Danny DeVito. Right? How did you start recognizing that you were operating from a wounded masculine or feminine space?
Oh, look, I think I still have realizations of it. So if you think about the wounding, in archetypal coaching, we either call it the shadow or the void.
Mm.
So say, for example, if you're in the wounded masculine and it's just not there, you may not have any boundaries at all. You may not know how to set boundaries. If you're on the opposite end of that pendulum swing, you could have rigid boundaries and no give at all, no compromise. Likewise, you can be quite aggressive and angry, or you're not using anger in a healthy way. So again, there's this pendulum swing. And even for the divine feminine, looking after everybody else without looking after ourselves, the typical martyr, that victim of, I never get what I want, whatever it is, there are so many different ways that it shows up in our life. For me, it was very much micromanaging and controlling because I felt out of control in my own life. Again, control is more that masculine aspect. When my creativity, I wasn't spending any time on that. That's me not nurturing my feminine receptiveness at all. When I'm constantly in that doing mode rather than spending any time being because I was afraid of what I'd find in myself. So again, there's these pendulum swings of doing too much of it or not enough of it. And again, I find that a lot of people who go, say, on the feminine embodiment journey end up too much in their feminine, and therefore it's in shadow because we're doing too much of it. So it's not in a healthy, balanced, divine way because we can't actually do the healthy, divine feminine without balancing it out a bit. And so when you are just in that feminine, it can be, like I say, the flightiness, the lack of groundedness, the lack of presence, being a bit off with the fairies, or just being stuck in your creativity and not actually really getting anything done. And so we need to be able to marry the two together so that we can use those things. I know I'll get single focused on a goal and I will work my ass off to make that goal materialize. But hang on, that's all masculine behavior. Where's the stopping, the waiting, just putting it to one side for a bit and letting it brew? Whilst I go off and do my creativity and allow myself to percolate on the ideas that I've come up with so that there's the mix of the being and the doing.
Yeah.
And that's really, really vital.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So, for our audience who's listening and they're like, oh, yeah, I can see that I'm, controlling and over nurturing of other people, and they want to start tapping into the divine essence of themselves, what's the first thing that they need to do? Or like they need, yeah, what's the first thing? What's the first step?
I always say to people, regardless of what you're trying to become more aware of, you actually need to stop and breathe. Because we can try and be aware, but if we're living in the future and living in the past, which most people are doing most of the time, we can't be present. We can't get those insights. We can't get that intuition that we need to be able to recognize even that there's something wrong. The first thing we need to do is stop, slow down, breathe, and become really present in our body.
Yeah.
And then we can start to feel, okay, what's going on here? Now that I'm back, now that I'm present, what is actually going on here? And then take it from there. And also, I wouldn't have been able to get where I am today without a multitude of healers, coaches, practitioners of so many different modalities, because I couldn't see, and I still can't see, my big problems because I'm in them. And sometimes we need somebody to help lift us up to a different perspective so that we can see things from a different way that then allows us to go, oh, yeah, okay, I see that now. Now, what change can I make?
Yeah. Love that. Thank you. Thank you for that. And yeah, I totally agree with that. It is that stop, stop, just stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we are, it's so hard for people to stop. I mean, I was telling you before I hit record, I'm going through hibernation. I'm like, I just went through that like recently. Why am I doing this again? And it's like the, the, mind fuck that goes through in your head when you need to stop is like, why? So yeah, it's having the courage to stop.
Yeah. Because we've been trained our whole life that the only thing that matters is doing. The only thing that matters is action and goals.
Yeah.
But if we're not, I mean, how many times have you been chasing a goal that's not even yours?
Yeah.
For me, doing the marriage and children, that wasn't my goal. I love my children to pieces and I just adore them to bits. But so many times I've gone, God, if I was on my own path, I would never have had them. Or I certainly wouldn't have had them with the person I had them with.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have even walked down the aisle, in fact, because there were signs before we even got married that this was not right. And so there's so many little things like that that play into it. And we end up chasing goals that aren't ours. We end up doing things that aren't meant for us. We end up in relationships that aren't healthy for us, all because we're living to this external idea of who and what we should be, rather than thinking about who we are and what we need for our highest good.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Such a great, great, great reminder for us all. Yeah. Because it's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I look at some of the goals that I've had in the past, even last week. I mean, I've been through a bit of I would like to call it hibernation, but it was more of a dark night, unfortunately. And it's been ongoing for, probably 4 months now. On and off, I've been into these deep, dark depths and then climbing myself out and feeling much better, but then I'm back down in it. And it's probably, I would have to say, it's probably the biggest one I've been through in terms of length of time and some of the depths I've been to since I left my marriage. So it's been huge. Now, yes, I know there's ascension in there. I know that I'm learning new things. I know that I'm going to come out this other side and things will be different. But one of the big things that threw me into it is I had to remind myself that I'm not general manager of the universe and I do not have to heal everybody. And what I had been trying to do once again was that massive lofty goal. Now, that's not my job. It really isn't. That's ego talking. That is, self-importance. That is, there's so many different things that is, but it's not my goal and it's not healthy for me. I need to bring my focus in smaller, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's almost like we are taught, especially when you go on social media and scroll and do all that crap that I absolutely hate, but still find myself doing.
Yeah.
It's like we're looking at everybody going, well, your goals aren't big enough. Or, if you're not earning 5 figures a month or 6 figures a month or whatever the hell they're talking about, it's not good enough. You don't have lofty enough goals. You're not whatever. But actually, so much of that is just shame marketing. Again, hitting home, you're not good enough. You're not worthy enough. You're not lovable enough. You're not doing enough. And I just can't be bothered with that anymore. Yeah. And I've been wise to it for a while, but I think the way that I'm now living it out in my life is changing.
That's kind of what I'm going through right now too. How interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's shame and guilt marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. You know why so many of these 5-6 figures a month marketing guru or coaching gurus are making that money is because they're preying on coaches who aren't making 5 figures a month and therefore think they're failing.
Yeah, it is.
That's the reason they're able to make that money. It's not because they're coaching one-to-one. It's not because they're helping people through trauma. It's because they're creating a trauma within people to say, you're not good enough unless you're earning this kind of money as a coach. And then all of these people who are in that industry are like, I'm not good enough. I'll do that course and that'll fix me.
Yeah.
And I get so angry. I unfollow so many people and hide so many ads and all that kind of stuff these days because I'm just like, I'm just not doing it. I'm not listening to that bullshit.
Yeah. And that's also why I kind of dissociating myself from the word coach as well, because that's one of the reasons why, because it's a shame because there's so many great coaches, but there's absolutely. Also it's got a bad rep now because there are so many that just prey on people.
And also, when you think about the training and development, yes, you know what? I haven't done NLP. To do an NLP trainer's training, whatever it is, it's full on. Like I know a lot of people who've been through it. It is full on and you learn a lot of stuff. A lot of what it deals with is the mind stuff though. Yes, it dips into the emotions a bit, but it's mostly mind stuff. Now, realistically, to get to a whole holistic perspective, we need to be looking at the body, the spirit, the mind, and the emotions. Yeah. And if we're not looking at all of those aspects of ourselves, then we are going to have these areas of our life that are not developing. Yeah. And no one modality, I truly believe, can fully heal a person. I love the life coaching that I do. I absolutely love it. And I see the changes it makes and it blows my mind. And also, just with that, I see the limitations. With kinesiology, I love it. I have had so many hundreds of kinesiology sessions now and given so many hundreds of kinesiology sessions now. I still absolutely love and adore it beyond. Like, it's such a powerful modality. And it's probably the closest one that I've seen that does look at mind, body, spirit, and emotions.
Yeah.
And it still has some limitations.
Yeah.
I've still worked with acupuncturists and hypnotherapists and other coaches and goodness knows what else, because nothing teaches you everything.
No.
And so, that's kind of where I go to with it. And again, if we can find a word that is better than coach, then I'll be jumping on that. But for now, that's the only one we got.
Yeah. No, I totally get it. And I totally resonate with everything that you just said. And I'm looking at the time. Like I said, I can talk to you all day. I'm like, oh my God. So, a couple more questions for you, Amanda. So the first one is, what would you like our audience to take away with them after listening to our conversation today?
I think it is, nobody knows you better than you. And even going back to that last question of, say the coaches, you will resonate with some people and you won't resonate with other people. Trust who you resonate with. I am very particular about who I put my energetic, spiritual health in the hands of. And I've put myself in some dodgy hands, probably not for a number of years now. But going back a few years, there were some really egoic people who did not have my best interests at heart. And that affected my healing journey. Now I am beyond picky about who I will let work on me. And even to the fact that when we are training and I'm learning new things, I will make eye contact with somebody that I trust to do the work with, and I'll go, when I know we're coming up to an exercise, so that I already have my body sorted and I can't just be approached by anybody. Again, that is a control thing, but it's also a respect for myself and my energy, because we will spend more time searching out, next car purchase than we will interviewing people who are going to be looking after our physical, mental, and emotional health, let alone our spiritual health. Mm-hmm. So I think the fact that everybody listening knows themselves deeply, work with people that you resonate with, and trust if it's the end of the road for you with that person, it's the end of the road for you with that person. You don't owe them anything. So yeah, no obligation.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that wisdom that you just shared. And last question for you, Amanda, and that's, what's setting your soul on fire right now?
Oh, I think reconnecting to life in general after the last couple of months of, it's not like I was not functional. I was still seeing clients. I was still in that space, but there was a bit of a darkness and I didn't quite know what to do with it. And that's often the way when you're going through your next period of growth, is that you do have that moment of darkness, those moments of pain, those moments of, is this all worth it? All the rest of it. And coming out of that is amazing, because you just start to see everything through different lenses. And so I'm really loving that right now. It's just reconnecting to everyone in my life, really. Yeah, it's been pretty good.
I'm happy to hear that. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much for your time today and sharing your love and wisdom with us. Amanda, where can people go to if they want to know more about you or how they can work with you?
Yeah, so my website's amandakate.com.au. So all my social links are there. And yeah, it'd be lovely to connect with some new people. Amazing. And thank you so much for shining your light in the world. Appreciate you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. I just so enjoyed our conversation. You have to come back. I'm sure we can
definitely.
talk more. Thank you.